Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This video is going to be about the restaurant chain that was known as the Little Chef, which is sadly no longer with us anymore. So the caravan manufacturer Sam Alper built and designed the first Little Chef modelled on diners he had seen in the United States, particularly one in Leadley, Oklahoma, which was called Little Chef. Opened in 1958 on Oxford Road, Reading, it had just 11 seats. The earliest Little Chefs were basic, prefabricated constructions with room for up to 20 customers, a staff of 3 or 4 and a provision for car parking. There was also a short-lived experiment in 1964 with a branch in London's Regent Park. From 1965 onwards, the outlets began to be built in brick, with room for about 40 customers, by which time there were 12 outlets. Standard decor and uniforms were brought in together with staff training. Later on, they were built with room for 60 customers, while parking space was improved, and signboards and other identifying marks were emphasised. By 1970, Little Chef became a subsidiary of the Trust of Houses Hotel, Restaurant and Catering, by which time there was 25 Little Chef restaurants. In 1970, Trust Houses merged with Charles Forte's Hotel and Catering Consortium to create Trust House Forte. The takeover by Forte gave Little Chef the capital and resources to expand rapidly. Soon, Trust House Forte had 44 Little Chef restaurants. Frustrated by planning laws, Forte began sending out teams to well-located transport cafes, offering the owners cash incentives to sell and move out within a week, so that Forte could turn their restaurants into Little Chefs. Following this tactic, the chain, by 1972, had expanded to 100 outlets. In the 1970s, there were also 2 restaurants in France, both of which closed by 1976. Sites were a mixture of self-service and waitress service, though predominantly the former. By 1976, there were 174 outlets, and the first Little Chef Lodge Motel was opened. In 1977, Jubilee pancakes were added to the menu. Little Chef outlets were opened at larger Trust House Forte service areas on motorways and trunk roads. In 1987, these service areas became known as Welcome Break, after the acquisition of the smaller Welcome Break group of motorway service areas and the Happy Eater roadside restaurants, which was Little Chef's main rival at the time, in 1986 as part of the breakup of the Imperial Group. In 1990, the Little Chef lodges were rebranded as Travel Lodge. In 1992-93, 2 sites were opened in the Republic of Ireland. In 1995, Forte announced the end of the Happy Eater brand, with all existing sites converted to Little Chef by 1997. Little Chef had a spin-off brand called Little Chef Express, which Forte developed in 1995 as a rival to fast food outlets. The first express outlet was at the Markham Moor service station. That's on the A1 North, though only as an addition to the existing Little Chef menu there. Only 5 restaurants were ever built on the roadside, and the idea was redeveloped when Little Chef was taken over by Compass, with the express takeouts being set up in food courts, including one in a Eurostar terminal. In 1996, catering and broadcasting company Granada successfully mounted a hostile takeover for the Forte Group. The Welcome Break chain was sold by Granada, with the Little Chefs at most service stations becoming a similar table service restaurant, branded as Red Hen. High prices earned the chain of the nickname Little Thief. In 1998, Granada brought AJ's Family Restaurants, another Little Chef rival, from the celebrated group, and converted all of its 15 sites to Little Chefs. AJ's had originally been set up in 1986 by 2 Happy Eater directors following their sale to Forte. In 2000, Granada merged with Compass to form Granada Compass, but the two de-merged in 2001, leaving Little Chef as part of Compass. At about this time, some Little Chefs began serving Harry Ramsden's meals, a cross-branding exercise undertaken by Compass, who also own Harry Ramsden's, though this serving ended in June 2004. The private equity investment company Permira bought Travelodge and Little Chef from the Compass Group in December 2002 for £712 million, forming a special purpose vehicle called TLLC Group Holdings. The Little Chefs, alongside motor service stations, formerly named Granada Motorway Service Areas and owned by Compass until 2006, were owned by Motor and operated as franchise outlets. In August 2004, Little Chef announced a plan to change its logo to a slimmer version of Fat Charlie, the chain's mascot. Little Chef's chief executive, Tim Scoble, said that this was the start of a re-image programme for Little Chef, since the chain has become a little bit dated, but now wishes to take it forward into the 21st century. CEO Scoble added, "We get accusations that Fat Charlie's overweight, and a lot of people have also written in to say it was a small child carrying hot food, which they said was dangerous." However, the idea was dropped after 15,000 customers complained. In 2005, it was announced by Primera that 130 underperforming restaurants were to be closed, reducing the chain to 234 restaurants. Prior to that, Compass had been gradually reducing the number of restaurants from well over 400 at one time. During 2005, Travelodge Hotels Limited, the new name for TLLC, made various announcements about the sale of some or all of the restaurants until, in October 2005, the chain was sold to the People's Restaurant Group, who plan to modernise the restaurants and introduce self-service. Also in 2005, the 5 Little Chef restaurants in Ireland were sold off to new operators and the Little Chefs were rebranded. The 2 Dublin ones became Mezzo restaurants, while the 3 others Eddie Rockets restaurants. In October 2005, Little Chef was sold to the People's Restaurant Group, as already mentioned, owned by catering entrepreneurs Lawrence Wasco and Simon Heath for £58 million, but with Primera retaining Travelodge. Upon purchasing the chain, Wasco travelled to 220 of the 234 restaurants that were trading and spoke to both customers and staff at each location. Wasco ultimately discovered that the buildings, facilities and equipment at every location needed major upgrades. As well as this, Wasco and Heath learned that the existing Burger King franchises were trading well, but that the grab-and-go concept was also needed to compete with emerging takeaway businesses at forecourts. In 2006, the People's Restaurant Group sold 65 of its sites under a leaseback deal for £59 million to Israeli property group Arazim. The purpose of this deal was to generate enough funds to reinvest into upgrading the existing sites. Soon after this deal was launched, Little Chef operated its own coffee shop brand, Coffee Tempo, with several larger branches. These grab-and-go units were developed by Nick Smith, who had joined Little Chef as development director after previously leading the design and implementation of the Wild Bean Cafe format at BP petrol stations. Little Chef also introduced a takeaway menu. The summer of 2006 saw poor weather which affected trading, as well as Wasco suffering a near-fatal heart attack. As a consequence, Wasco had told by directors to avoid any stressful working environment and was forced to step away from the business entirely. In December 2006, it was reported that Little Chef was undergoing serious financial problems. The business was said to be losing around $3 million a year and was struggling to keep up with rent payments. On the 21st of December, Little Chef announced it was in urgent rescue talks with a group of American investors to secure funding. It had been suggested at the time that PricewaterhouseCoopers was on standby to act as administrators for the company. However, a source close to the company was quoted saying, "We are still very hopeful that this situation can be resolved." At the time, the People's Restaurant Group was being advised by KPMG's corporate recovery arm. On Christmas Eve 2006, Little Chef was taken into administration. On the 3rd of January 2007, Little Chef was rescued from administration by the private equity group R Capital, which paid less than £10 million. Of the 235 branches, 38 were not included in the sale and were closed immediately, while the remaining ones continued to operate normally. By December 2007, the number of sites not leased from Travelodge or Arazim, Little Chef's two main landlords, closed, as Little Chef had not been able to reach an agreement with them. All the franchised outlets on Moto sites closed down between 2008 and 2010, many of which been replaced by Costa Coffee. In April 2008, R Capital recruited Ian Pegler to lead as the CEO of Little Chef. Pegler had previously worked for Little Chef and Happy Eater under Trust House Forte. In 2009, the chef Heston Blumenthal appeared in a Channel 4 documentary, Big Chef Takes on Little Chef, to revamp the Little Chef chain. The programme was broadcast from the 19th to the 21st of January and involved Blumenthal introducing a new menu and organising a refit of the village of Popham Outlet near Basingstoke. The trial was successful, with a promise from the owner that none of the dishes would change without Blumenthal's consent. Blumenthal returned to Popham in February 2009 to review progress, and the owner promised that if there was a profit within 3 months, the redesigned format would be spread to all branches. Furthermore, 2 former Little Chef branches in Ings and Malton would reopen. It was later announced that a further 2 Little Chefs at York and Kettering would be refurbishing the style of the trial in Popham. In 2011, a further 10 new concept restaurants opened in Doncaster, Markham Moor North, Shrewsbury, Black Cat, Fontwell, Weston-on-the-Green North, Wisley South, Ilminster, Podimore and Amesbury, hope I pronounced all them right, with a view of investing £20 million in updating the brand across the estate. New menus have been introduced and restaurants have been refurbished based on the style which Blumenthal designed in 2009. A full rebranding exercise was undertaken by Venture 3, which was hailed as a success by the graphic design sector. As part of its modernisation, the company used its new branding to create a presence on Facebook and Twitter. A good-to-go deli offering was introduced in the new concept restaurants, making bespoke sandwiches, as well as takeaway meals appealing to customers on the move. Good to Go sat alongside the traditional sit-down Little Chef format, and in May 2001, the company reported a 47% increase in food sales. On the 11th of January 2012, Little Chef announced it had planned to close 67 of the failing restaurants that would result in the loss of up to 600 jobs. On the 7th of February 2012, R Capital announced it was putting the Little Chef chain through a pre-pack administration to offload a number of toxic leases. Graham Sims, the chairman of Little Chef, said that suppliers and other unsecured creditors would suffer from the decision to put the chain through this process, which had been taken reluctantly. He expected job losses to be at the lower end of the previously announced range of 500 to 600. The business was to refocus on a core of 95 profitable sites By January 2012, 11 Little Chefs have been converted to the Blumenthal format. In April 2012, Chairman Graham Sims stated everyone remembers Little Chef from the 1970s, with curtains at the windows and wooden tables. It worked well for 20 or 30 years, but frankly it hasn't kept pace with the evolution of the retail market. It lost its way. We've gone through 3 or 4 owners in 10 years, and none of them have really taken the tough decisions to sort out the assets, the cost base, and bring the offer for the 21st century. In Sims' view, some of the owners had treated the company as a cash cow, looking for the traditional quick in and out. In May 2012, Little Chef closed its headquarters in Sheffield, outsourcing its operational day-to-day support to LT Pubs Limited in Norfolk, as well as its marketing and PR to Parker Hobart. The Barnsdale Bar South branch closed in 2012. However, for a short time, the former restaurant would house Little Chef's IT department. In September 2012, the company announced plans to entirely franchise. In April 2013, R Capital announced it would seek a buyer for the Little Chef businesses of 78 outlets from Scotland to Cornwall, all of which were claimed to be profitable, a claim denoting an ostensible successful restructuring. The sale was expected to have a price tag of tens of millions of pounds. In June 2013, Little Chef announced that it would drop Heston Blumenthal's creations from its menus. Little Chef spokesman Richard Hillgroves was quoted as saying Heston originally approached us to do his Channel 4 show about how he was going to save Little Chef. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but he took everything away from its core. In August 2013, R Capital sold Little Chef to Kuwaiti firm Koot Food Group for £15 million. Koot Food Group was the only bidder that was interested in retaining the Little Chef brand, as other bidders were believed to have included McDonald's, KFC and Costa Coffee, who wanted to rebrand the sites. Upon purchasing the chain, Chairman Fadwa Al-Homazi remarked that the Koot Food Group had plans to revitalise the chain. Koot Food Group would begin implementing more Burger King franchises at the sites, as well as introducing Subway. In August 2014, Little Chef attracted headlines when Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, stopped off at Little Chef Doncaster en route to a private engagement. In May 2016, it was announced that the Little Chef restaurant in Warminster would undergo a considerable renovation. In August 2016, Little Chef ran their Summer of Big Wins competition, encouraging families to stop off during the busy summer trading period. Around the same time, the Chippen branch was closed and converted into a standalone Burger King, leaving Little Chef with a portfolio of 8 independent Burger King franchises. These locations included Whitemare Pool, Rushington, Rudgley, Saltash, all of which also house Subway franchises, North Muscombe, Chesterfield and Holkin. In January 2017, it emerged that the Koot Food Group were looking to sell Little Chef, having discussions with a number of interested buyers. In February 2017, Koot Food Group sold all 70 Little Chef sites to Euro Garages for £16 million, along with 1 year's licence for them to operate under the Little Chef brand. The sale also included 8 former Little Chef sites that had been transformed into standalone Burger King locations. The vision for Euro Garages was to convert, by 2018, all Little Chef sites to their franchise partners' brands, such as Starbucks and Greggs. Immediately upon purchasing the sites, operations at Euro Garages removed alcohol from sale due to their owners' policy and ethical concerns regarding serving alcohol to motorists, as well as reducing many of the sites' operating hours from closing at 10 p.m. to closing at 3 p.m. Sites such as Winterbourne Abbas, Axminster and Dolgeloo, please forgive me if I not pronounced that right, closed soon after the acquisition. In July 2017, Euro Garages closed 2 prime locations at the Blumenthal remodelled in Popham and Barton Stacey. During that period, the Little Chef brand suffered online criticism in platforms such as TripAdvisor, with complaints concerning poor quality food and the buildings not being kept clean. There were also complaints from Little Chef staff that they were not being kept informed about transformation processes regarding their sites, and that their long-standing service to Little Chef had been ignored. Supermarket springs to mind. The closure process of Little Chef was scheduled to be complete before the end of 2017, but was postponed until early 2018 due to timing problems. The licence agreement for the brand expired at the end of January 2018, causing Euro Garages to temporarily rename all remaining Little Chef locations to EG Diner, until they could be converted into their partner brands. All EG Diners that were not rebranded closed by October 2018. I will end this video with a notice which was at the Balhaldy South restaurant, which closed in March 2017, which read, "We have been serving you our delicious Olympic breakfast, Works burgers and pancakes since the 80s, and we have done this with all the passion and pride our staff could give you. We would like to thank you for your valued custom over the years. As always, and since 1958, we wish you a safe journey home." And that concludes the video in regards to the history of the Little Chef, and quite obviously there's some brands that exist today that have obviously been part of Little Chef. Seems quite a complicated monopoly of things. It's a shame that obviously it went down the pan, but like with all businesses, if you fail to modernise and go with the times, then you die. I'd also be very interested in your memories of Little Chef or your views on this video down below. Would be nice to get a little thread going. Always interested in hearing about people's experiences in regards to the subjects of the videos that I do. And obviously in the meantime, please do like, share and subscribe. And all that is now left for me to say is stay safe, take care of yourselves, and see you in the next video.